Thumbs up from the back. All right. Good evening and welcome to the San Francisco Board of Education Candidate Forum. My name is Allison Go, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. The League of Women Voters, we are a nonpartisan political nonprofit that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League never supports or opposes candidates, but we do take positions on issues. Today we also acknowledge that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush and Ohlone peoples. They were the original inhabitants of San Francisco, and as the indigenous stewards of this land, the Ohlone peoples have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their sacred obligations and responsibilities. We recognize that we too benefit from living and working on their traditional homelands, and we affirm their sovereign rights as the first peoples of these lands here in San Francisco. This year's election presents many choices for San Francisco voters, and we're committed at the League to providing the resources that voters need to exercise this most fundamental right of our democracy, and be assured that everyone's votes will be counted this November. Please remember that you must register to vote by October 24th. That deadline is coming up really soon. And all registered voters will be mailed a ballot in early October. I personally received mine last week. I hope everybody else did as well. And options for in-person voting will be available both early and on November 8th. Please visit our website at lwvsf.org/vote, where you can find all of the voter resources that we offer and about how to return your ballot. Today, the League of Women Voters, we're a nonprofit organization, and if you would like to support our work in free events, such as this one today, please become a member or donate on our website at lwvsf.org. Today, I'm pleased to introduce Maxine Anderson, our moderator for tonight. Maxine, clap for Maxine. Maxine is a current board member of the League of Women Voters of California. Maxine was born and raised in Chicago and attended public schools there. She has served on the San Francisco League Board as chair of the Advocacy and Action Committee. She currently serves on the League of Women Voters of California Criminal Justice Reform Committee. The San Francisco Human Rights Commission gave her the Hero Award for her outstanding contributions to voting rights, and she also serves on the Older Women's League Board. For fun, she enjoys traveling and reading. I am really pleased and excited to welcome Maxine, our moderator for this evening.
Thank you, Allison, and welcome to the candidates for San Francisco Board of Education. And welcome to all of you who have come out this evening, either via electronics or here in person, to hear what they have to say. The candidates will have a chance to present their views on issues affecting the city and to answer questions about those issues that were submitted in advance for tonight's forum. First, I'd like to remind you of our ground rules. Responses to questions should be on the issues and policy related. Candidates are expected to be respectful of other candidates and asked to not make personal attacks on other individuals. Here are the procedures for the forum. The candidates will have the opportunity to make 90-second opening and closing statements. Opening statements will be in alphabetical order by first name. Closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order by first name. Each candidate will have 75 seconds to answer questions. The order of answering each question will be rotated among the candidates. Each candidate will have the opportunity to answer the same number of questions. Any rebuttals may be included in the candidate's closing statement, which will be 90 seconds. A countdown timer will be displayed with a visual indication of remaining time for a response. They'll be right down there in the front. Every aspect of the forum will be equally fair to all candidates. Thank you to our attendees tonight. For those who are attending online, you are in listen. For those who are online, you are in listen-only mode. The Q&A and the chat features are not active, just so you know, so you're not pushing that button constantly expecting something to happen. This forum will be recorded and made available on our website, our YouTube channel, and on SFGovTV cable channels. You have many important decisions to make on November 8th. Tonight's forum will give you an opportunity to learn before you vote. The questions for tonight's forum were submitted by San Francisco residents and community organizations. Now, let's begin. As I mentioned, we will start off with 90-second opening statements in alphabetical order, and therefore we welcome our candidates and thank you for participation in this forum. Please introduce yourself, tell us which neighborhood you live in, and why you are running for San Francisco Board of Education. And we'll start with Alita Fisher.
Thank you. Is this on? Yes, that sounds on. Hi, my name is Alita Fisher. I live in the Lakeview OMI neighborhood in District 11, and I'm running for Board of Education because of my children. I am a former foster parent, now adoptive parent. All of my children have learning disabilities or learning differences, and I'm a former mechanical engineer turned special education advocate. I've been a public school parent for 17 years, served on all the PTAs, PTSAs. I've served on district level advisory committees for 10 years, and it's my experience going into not only my children's IEP meetings, but meetings throughout the city, school after school, day after day, where we have the same conversation over and over again. We need more services. We need more paraeducators. We need more school social workers, more school psychologists, more nurses, more everything. And what we found is when we provide more services in our schools, doesn't matter if it's targeted at one population or another, everyone benefits from it. And so I'm running to make sure that we bring more supports and services into our schools, and that we make sure that when we are talking about our billion-dollar budget, we are prioritizing our students first and foremost, over central office, over anything else, and that our budget is aligned with our values of inclusion, equity, diversity, and love for all of our students. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ann Shu, did I get your name right?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
So it's on your feet. Good evening. My name is Ann Shu. I am the only immigrant and business person on the current school board right now, and I'm running for election this November. I have been a professional working in the high-tech industry for 25 years, running my own companies for 18 of those years. And I only got involved with the school board and school district during the pandemic when I saw that my twin sons, who are now 16 in 2 different schools, were not engaged with school at all. And I looked at the school board then and found them renaming schools, painting over murals, doing lots of politics and not focusing on our students. So I and thousands of other parents worked together to recall 3 school board members, and I was appointed as a replacement by Mayor London Breed in March of this year. And I'm running for election because I want us to focus not on politics, but on student outcomes. So my first priority is student achievement and academic excellence. Second is safe schools, both physically and emotionally for our students. And last but not least, fiscal discipline and operational excellence for our school district. I'm here to reform SFUSD to get the politics out and to focus on educating our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gabriela Lopez.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gabriela Lopez. I live in the Mission District in San Francisco, and I am running once again for the Board of Education to ensure that there is the educator perspective at a decision-making level. My background and experience in education is rooted and dates back over 13 years. I started off as a paraeducator, which helped build the foundation for me to become an effective bilingual educator in SFUSD public schools. I then went on to I learned the importance of union work and became the union building rep at my school site, along with being a member of the school site council. I was the arts coordinator for our site, and I also participated in the district-wide Mentoring for Success program. I was formally elected to the Board of Education, becoming the youngest woman ever elected, and while I was on the board, was a fierce advocate for educators, students, and families. During the pandemic, I made sure our school district protected teachers, students, and our families. I was on the ground every single day providing tech support for families during virtual learning and getting school supplies in students' hands. I continue to be an advocate for education, and I'm currently working at the University of San Francisco with future educators in SFUSD schools. And I want to note we are in a critical moment in education, and it is important to thoughtfully prepare caring educators during this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Karen Fleshman?
Good evening. Thank you so much, Maxine, Allison, and League of Women Voters for all your leadership in pulling this forum together. I'm proud to be a League member. My name is Karen Fleshman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am running for for the Board of Education to unify San Francisco for San Francisco Unified. I'm a SFUSD parent of 2 students who've been in SFUSD since kindergarten, the daughter of retired educator and a graduate of public schools. The early part of my career was in the immigrants' rights movement. I shifted focus to youth workforce development and have 20 years of experience preparing young adults for success in college and careers that I will bring to this position. I currently work as a diversity, equity, inclusion educator, shifting workplace and school culture to be safe and positive for everyone, including at my children's SFUSD school. My priorities are to invest in students and educators' social emotional well-being and academics, to promote collaborative decision-making, and to provide budget transparency and accountability, with a specific emphasis on preparing our high school graduates to graduate into the college or career of their dreams with an individualized learning plan from 9th grade all the way through graduation.
Thank you very much. Lainey Motamedi, did I get that right?
Lainey Matomedy.
Matomedy.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Lainey Matomedy, and I am running because my priorities are student success, fiscal responsibility and good governance, and rebuilding trust in our district. I'm wholly focused on fulfilling our obligation to provide quality education for all of our students at all of our schools, because San Francisco deserves to have an excellent public education system, and it's an essential part of a thriving and vibrant city. I'm a parent with over a decade of engagement in SFUSD. I've been on PTAs, school site councils, and volunteered in classrooms, tutoring, lunchrooms, yard duty, etc. 4 years, my parents are public school educators, and I know how hard they work, and when I joined the district, I knew I was going to pitch in however I could. So 4 years ago at the district level, I started serving a 4-year term on a budget advisory committee that oversees about $80 million that comes from the city to the district each year. And it was there that I discovered the real disconnect between leadership, central office decision-making, and what our schools and our students and our educators need. In that role, I advocated for accountability, transparency, and really aligning funding with our student priorities. I have over 20 years of professional experience in state government, clean energy regulation, business, and nonprofit boards here in San Francisco. It's a pleasure to be here, and my focus is, again, student success, fiscal responsibility, and rebuilding trust.
Thank you very much, Lainey. And Lisa?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this event for us to be here, and thanks to those participating online. My name is Lisa Weissman-Ward. I live in the Mission District, and I am currently on the Board of Education. I've been serving on the Board of Education for nearly 7 months. I am the product of public education all the way from elementary school through middle school, through high school, through college, and through law school. Everything has been public education. I'm a daughter of civil rights activists and educators, I myself am an educator and an immigrants' rights activist. I teach, I'm the associate director at the Stanford Law School Immigrants' Rights Clinic, and in that space I wear two hats. One is as an immigration attorney activist defending against deportation, trying to keep our families together. The second hat that I wear is as an educator. So I teach, I mentor, I supervise law students, and I spend my days working with them to understand the systems that we're working within and that we're trying to fight and dismantle, and also about the importance of consensus building and negotiation and meeting each other where we are. But perhaps most relevant to why I have agreed to serve on the board and why I'm seeking a 4-year term is because I'm a mama. I am a mother of 2 SFUSD children in 2nd and 5th grade. And I have come into this role understanding and learning about how many amazing things the district has, but also how many things we're missing. My focuses are threefold. I want to work to close the opportunity gaps by centering student outcomes. We need to restore trust and create transparent systems and ensure fiscal accountability. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Lisa. And now, the fun part, right, ladies? We're going to start in on the questions that were submitted to the league before this event began. So I'm going to start with question 1, and we're going to try to get in as many as possible so you can really get out there your message on how you feel about the issues that were brought up. And so we're going to be really look at the stop. Okay, I'm just saying, don't forget to stop. Okay, question 1, and we're going to start with Anne. Okay? If I may, I'll call you all by your first names.
Yeah.
Okay. What experience, if any, do you have in education, and what qualifications do you bring to the table to make critical decisions impacting children's education? And Anne, we'll start with you.
Thank you. As I introduced earlier, I'm not an education professional, so my experience with education is my personal experience, which is in all public schools. In the United States, I immigrated when I was age 11, so middle school, high school, college, and graduate school, all in public institutions, and my twin sons, who also have just been to public institution schools all their lives. And my qualifications is that I have run companies. I do know what it takes to run a business, including fiscal responsibility and operational excellence, but most importantly, setting goals and priorities so that the company all the employees of the company can move in the same direction. And I think that is something woefully lacking in SFUSD for the past many years, is no clear goals and priorities. And that is something that the board is working on right now in fixing, and I'm wholly supportive of that. And once we get everybody going in the right direction and the same direction, I think we can turn the ship around.
Thank you very much. Gabriella?
I appreciate this question because I can elaborate more on my extensive experience in education. So as I mentioned, my work and my heart really is rooted in education. I have a bachelor's in liberal studies to become an elementary school teacher. I received my master's in education from UCLA, where I also gained a teaching credential in the state of California and a BCLAD authorization where I can teach in Spanish in SFUSD schools or in public schools. I take all of that experience and bring that at the decision-making level for the Board of Education because it is woefully lacking, and often we'll see in boards of education you don't have the on-the-ground experience from the people who are doing the work. So one of my, what I believe my qualifications are is this ability to connect that expertise and that experience with the community and the people who are impacted by our decisions. Now I work with future educators and instilling these beliefs and these understandings in what they're bringing into the classroom for our students. And the last thing is I'm currently beginning a PhD in education program at Stanford.
Thank you very much. Karen?
My first job out of college was as an English as a second language educator, and I was fortunate to work for an organization that really taught us very well how to be teachers. My career has been in youth workforce development and college access, and I've worked for some of the leading organizations in this space for Year Up, for SEO scholars, for 3rd Street Youth Center and Clinic, just down the road from us. Through my work experience, I became the mentor to many young adults, and I maintain those mentor relationships even though I'm no longer working for those organizations. So I've literally seen them buy houses, get married, have kids, and all of that. And because I've been an effective mentor to them, they've referred additional people to me. So I have a lot of mentees. And it was really my mentees who inspired me to do my current work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They said, Karen, we're grateful to be working in these companies, but we are being bombarded by racism nonstop. And that's when I decided to shift focus from preparing young adults of color for the workplace to preparing the workplace for young adults of color. So I'm constantly facilitating adult learning experiences to shift corporate culture.
Thank you very much. Lainey?
Sure. So both my mom and my stepdad are retired LA Unified school teachers, and my dad's a professor. So I grew up in an environment where I was helping to grade papers, helping to prepare classrooms for kids. And so when I joined SFUSD, I ended up doing similar kinds of work with teachers. In the classroom, tutoring, helping kids learn to read, understanding the curriculum and instruction that was being presented to them. Likewise with math, 3rd grade interventions, 5th grade interventions around math learning. So really understanding what the curriculum and instruction in SFUSD and how it is being delivered, and those resources that teachers are being given or not being given. And as part of the budget advisory committee that I was part of, we reviewed programs and program efficacies here in the district. And as I was talking about the disconnect before, I realized what the district was saying was happening wasn't happening. And so what I bring is that asking the questions and being able to connect the dots between the design and the statement of what the program is and what is actually happening in the classroom or not happening in the classroom.
Thank you very much. Lisa?
Yes. So I've been an educator. I've been an immigration attorney for over 16 years, and I've been an educator for the last nearly 10. And one of the things that I have learned in my space as an educator is the value of curriculum and the value of implementing the curriculum. You cannot have one without the other. If you have a great curriculum but you don't know how to implement it, our folks aren't going to learn. If you have a lousy curriculum and you can implement it, it's also problematic. You have to have both. And so I have spent every time I teach my students, after each session, I go back and I look at what could I have done better, how might I implement this, how might I adjust this curriculum so that it's meeting the students and their needs. Something else that I've been really focused on is understanding the value of patience, and that each of my students comes to me with their individual skills and gifts, and understanding how to approach my work with a strengths-based mindset, really leaning into meeting folks where they are, using cultural humility lens to make sure I'm engaging, and really making sure that all of the work and all of the education I'm sharing is transparent and accessible so that students feel like they can participate and engage and learn, and then do learning with one another.
Thank you very much. Alita?
Thank you for this question. So I've been, as I mentioned, 17 years as a parent in the district. I've served on various district level advisory committees for 10 years. I'm the daughter and granddaughter of teachers, and much like Lainey, spent my summers in classrooms. I used to come home after school and play school with my stuffed animals. I loved school, but it was really my experience with my children that made me realize schools weren't set up for everyone. So that's why I became a special education advocate, and now I'm the executive director of a small special education advocacy nonprofit in the city, CASE. And in the world of special education, the way an individualized education program works is for each child, you review data, you do assessments, you get all the information you need to figure out what a child's strengths and weaknesses are. And then you take that and you provide supports and services to meet that child's needs, right? That's what we do meeting after meeting, which is a microcosm of what we're doing in the district right now with our consultant and our governance. And So I bring a lot of this real-world experience from a microcosmic level, and I want to take that to the big picture level on the board.
Thank you very much. Now for our second question. You all are excited. Oh, great answers. How do you plan on addressing food insecurity in our public schools? And Gabriella, you get to go first.
I've been thinking about this given the work that I've done on the board, given my own experience as a child in public schools, and what we did during the pandemic to ensure that students had access to healthy food when schools were closed. And that's a number one priority that we were able to accomplish and ensure, even if students weren't accessing the school buildings. Why I see this is a bigger connection to something wider is the understanding that if students don't have access to healthy foods, that does impact their learning. In SFUSD, we have implemented so many strategies and innovative ways to get healthy food that kids want to eat. As a teacher, I've seen food that they're not interested in eating, and hearing from our student population to make sure that they have access to something they enjoy eating and that they build a healthy relationship with food. We have our own kitchens in the school district, and I think that is a process we need to expand on, given what's happened at SODA and at the McAteer Kitchen, and how we can implement it district-wide.
Thank you very much. Karen?
So the healthy food is a big concern of mine. I will say as a parent, I was very excited when we went with Revolution Foods, but my kids refuse to eat it. They don't like it. And there's so much food that is going to waste. And I live next to a school, and it attracts vermin, that there's so much food that's outside being composted. So I think we really need to study how can we make the food so that the students want to eat it. I know at some neighboring districts they have salad bars with healthy food that's available all the time with fresh fruits and vegetables. I would love to see something like that at SFUSD, as well as how can we ensure that food allergies are taken into consideration. I think a lot of focus is on nut allergies, but there's a lot of soy allergies that we need to be paying more attention to. So really listening to students about what they want to eat and making sure that we're providing it is going to be a top priority.
Thank you very much. Lainey?
I've helped in a lot of lunchrooms, and I've seen that waste. One thing that we haven't talked about, though, is now this year we're doing free lunch. Last year we did free lunch, and that's great, but one of the benefits of it is there used to be a line that kids had to get into if you were getting the school lunch that was really, really slow, and kids didn't have access to the time to eat. They were being singled out and pushed in and waiting to eat just because they were getting school lunch. And so I think regardless of what we end up happening with free lunch, there needs to be streamlined so kids have access to the food. In addition, we are expanding freshly made school lunch in all of our middle schools. My daughter's school has been a recipient, and it was like a switch flipped. Kids are now eating their full meals, there's less waste, they're excited for lunch, and again, because they are not having to get in specialized lines and show ID, they have the time to eat, which is wonderful. I also think we need to continue the partnerships during winter breaks, summer breaks, so that families have access to food and know where to get food for those meals for their children and for them as families as well.
Thank you very much. Lisa?
Great. I would agree with what everyone has said thus far. Food insecurity in our public schools is a very big deal. If our students are not fed or feeling satiated or have the water or whatever you need to drink, they're not going to be able to focus on the learning. And so we really need to make sure that those core those core needs are taken care of if we're going to expect our students to be engaged and excited and just focused on the learning. I am also grateful that all students have access to free lunch. We know, we've heard in the district and our role on the board that students are being impacted by the fact that they don't have access to snacks. which actually came from federal funds that had been cut, so not anything related to state or the district specifically, but that has been impacting our students. Yes, Revolution Foods, I think folks were really excited about it, but any of us that have kids in the district know that it did not go that well. I want to lean into what Lainey mentioned in terms of the programs that are expanding with Refresh. We have seen students are excited to eat, and the idea that we actually took kitchens out of schools and are now in this situation where we don't have the infrastructure, and so we did not have good foresight back then, so we need to be changing that, thinking about these issues moving forward.
Thank you very much. And Ann.
Wait, you want me to go first?
Yeah, Alita, sorry.
That's all right. I mean,
No.
I appreciate that Lisa touched on the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, that's the base level of, like the foundation of a house. If a student's basic needs aren't being met, there's no way they're open to learning, and food is a huge part of that. So I appreciate the work that we've been doing with community partnerships. We have community schools that bring community resources into our schools, such as food pantries. My son goes to Denman, and we have a food bank once a week. We need to do more of that at more schools. And I'm excited to see that we've got additional community schools funding. Thank you, State of California, for those additional grants. We need more partnerships. Today I was at a hub in the Excelsior where families on Wednesdays can stop by and get free food, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays they're also offering housing assistance, helping people apply for benefits, things like that. So it's so much more than just food. Also, in the past, we've involved student in the work. When we did the Revolution Foods contract, we actually had our students as part of the tasting committee. And so the more we can bring our students in to have ownership, the better off we'll be.
Thank you very much. Ann.
Now it's my turn. Thank you. No, I think all the other candidates have said everything that I wanted to say. So really my first encounter, and I'm very fortunate, my first encounter with food insecurity was as a driver for the food bank during the pandemic. That on the weekends for about 10 months, I brought one of my high school age sons, and we drove around and delivered food to the households around San Francisco, mostly in the east and southeast neighborhoods. And I was also a volunteer at the Roosevelt Middle School handing out school lunches when kids were not in school. And I was out on that day when it was orange and there was pollution that day. I was out there handing out food. I think Lainey mentioned earlier that we are expanding kitchens, and I was on the bond oversight committee that oversaw some of the spending so that we can put kitchens back into the schools, and definitely a supporter of that. And actually, one thing that I do want to mention, no one has mentioned, is that we actually give the same amount of food to high school students as well as elementary school students, and that does not make sense because I have 2 high school sons who have to bring food from home to supplement.
Thank you very much. Okay, our third question. Can you share your thoughts on the new Board of Education governing model and how it may impact the Board of Education? Karen, you get to answer this first.
On the one hand, I am very supportive of the focus on student outcomes. Having worked for organizations that were very outcomes focused and disciplined in that way, and really pushing the decision making to the educator level, I think it will be good. On the other hand, I feel like we are rushing way too fast, and that the community does not really know what's going on. Last night, there were 50 items at the Board of Education meeting. It went until 11 o'clock at night, and these were significant items. Sexual harassment policy, Revolution Foods contract, many different items, the new bond. And on Saturday, the board is meeting to decide on the goals, vision, and outcomes and guardrails going forward, and then they plan to adopt it by vote in early November. And then they're going to calendar the next 5 years of board meetings to focus on those specific outcomes. I'm concerned that not as many San Franciscans know exactly what's going on and how fast all these decisions are being made.
Thank you very much. Lainey?
I wish it was that fast. But I am excited about our new governance model. It is focused on student outcomes. One of our goals is 50% of our meeting time will be spent on students and what they're experiencing and the outcomes of our decisions on students. The other thing that's a real big change that hasn't yet been implemented, and the goal is to start in December, is our agendas will be posted 12 days in advance. Part of why our meetings are so long is people can't see our agenda before. This will change so people have the opportunity to reflect, to see the agenda, reach out, have questions answered, public as well as board. There will be a documented Q&A that is part of the final agenda that is posted with 72 hours notice. But that will allow for a lot of the conversation and the work that needs to be done to make sure that we're making good decisions and that public input is vetted in a way that's much more authentic than a one-way communication at our board meetings. I'm also very convinced that the way the board and our governance structure has been working has failed. We see that in how our literacy numbers are, our math numbers, our career and college readiness numbers. It's time for a change.
Thank you very much. Lisa?
Thank you. Yes, we've been working on this since June, and it may feel fast, but I just want to note, when folks look at our statistics about what we are not doing for our kids, I would just underscore we are not moving fast enough. We do not have time to lose when it comes to centering our children and making sure that we are meeting their needs and their goals and making sure that everyone has access to an excellent education. In terms of the work that we've done over the last month and a half, we've done over 20 visits at schools in the evenings and on weekends with 2 board members usually, sometimes 1, sometimes 3, in community throughout the city. That has never been done before, ever. And this is just us getting started. So this is not a, you pop into community, you get input, and you leave. This is in community. This is listening. This is then reflecting the input and the values that we have heard from community. And then it is making sure that we are held accountable. So this is not a one-time endeavor in terms of community. This is a start of a transformative shift in the culture of how we are engaging with the community, so folks do not have to come to 555 Franklin in order to get their needs heard.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alita?
So actually the engaging with community has actually been done, and it's been done multiple times. And that's part of the problem that we have with trust in the community, right, is the fact that we've done this. I've done it multiple times on the attendance working group and LCAP task force. We've gone out and held in both of those situations either 30 or 50 listening sessions in community, and that work has then turned around and gone nowhere, which is part of why the big key to all this, the devil is always in the details. Implementation is going to be key here. The student outcomes, great. Vision, values, goals, guardrails, picking a few priorities, great. The devil's going to be in the details. Do we have the metrics we need to actually get to the point we want to get with our vision and values and our goals and guardrails? We don't. Not in our 3rd grade reading levels, not in our social emotional goals. And we don't have an authentic engagement process with our community members other than coming to the Board of Ed right now. And so there's a lot of work. I'm very cautiously optimistic, but there is a lot of work and a lot of things we need to do behind the scenes to make this work appropriately. Implementation is key.
Thank you. Anne?
As a newcomer to the field of education, I was very glad to get some governance training along with this board starting in March, April of this year. And what I've learned is that school boards actually work kind of like corporate boards, where we do not meddle in the business or the job of the superintendent. We are actually supposed to set the goals for the school district overall, and then let the professionals, which comprised of the superintendent and his whole team, to figure out a way for us to achieve those goals with some guardrails. That's why we have goals and guardrails that we're working on right now, drafting and hoping to finalize on October 25th. And that has been very helpful for me as a board member to know what my lane is, what I'm supposed to do and what I'm not supposed to do. So none of us are supposed to hire or fire principals. The only person we can hire and fire is the superintendent. So this governance training has been very good for me personally, and I think it should continue for all the board members going forward.
Thank you very much. Gabriella?
So as a former board member, I was working within communities. I would come to specific areas of the city to engage with different organizations, different groups. As a bilingual educator, I would do it in the language that was more accessible for the people who were involved. But it is true that it wasn't implemented as a formal way for a board member to be engaged on the ground in that way. I'm looking at the new structure, and I do appreciate the attempt, a way to help us be more organized and to be more effective, but I want to ensure that we don't limit any way for the public to engage however they can. So continuing to operate in a way where people can access the board and have recorded their issues so that we can access it later on, I believe that's really important, while simultaneously redoing the structure that makes it more accessible. I think overall, people need to understand what the Board of Education does, and it's really important that as a board, we educate the public on that. What are we voting on? How can they be involved? How can they contribute to these decisions as we are here to represent the public?
Thank you very much. Our next question, let me put my mouth right up here on this microphone. We've seen dropping enrollment in SFUSD. How do you feel about the investment in new schools? And we're going to start with Lainey.
I missed the second
Okay.
half of the question.
We've seen dropping enrollment in SFUSD. How do you feel about investment in new schools?
I think we've seen dropping enrollment in SFUSD because we've seen a real lack of trust in families about what we offer and what their students are going to experience when they attend our schools. One of the things that I've been really focused on is developing accountability and transparency about what it is that the district offers academically, enrichment, resources, supports for all students at all sites at a baseline. And then what do we do when there are students that need additional supports, or we're committing to additional pathways or other opportunities at our school site? There is very little documentation available about any of our schools and what they offer on a consistent way that doesn't require families or students to actively seek that information. We haven't published a course catalog for our high schools since 2014, and our enrollment reflects that. So I am very much an advocate of being clear about what our commitments are, so that we want every school to have a unique feel and to be warm and welcoming, but we want every school to have consistent offerings.
Thank you very much. Lisa?
Yes, so we've seen dropping enrollment, and I agree that it's because our communities, our caregivers, our families do not feel like they are getting access to quality or equitable educational opportunities. And that might mean they don't think that the opportunities are sufficient. It might mean that they don't feel like their students are being supported emotionally or physically, or that they're getting access to IEPs or other services. We have an issue where we are not paying our teachers, so we're losing trust in that. We have an educator shortage because our teachers are also losing trust. We are seeing this sort of we have seen a mass exodus, a hemorrhaging of both students and teachers from the district, and I think it relates to the trust and the quality of both work and education that we're providing to our educators and to our teachers. I think investments in schools is really, really important. I think whether it's a new school or whether it's an existing school with a community and sort of a family of love surrounding that community, I think our investments in our educators, in our families, in our communities is what's key to making sure that we can get folks excited about being here. I want to be the district's hype woman. I want to get our district back up in a way that people are excited to be a part of.
Thank you very much. Alita?
I think our enrollment actually went up by about 1,000 this year it's based on the most recent data. So that was actually very encouraging to me to see. But I think that there's a lot, as everyone else has mentioned, we do have a huge discrepancy between what's available at schools. And when the new student assignment system was proposed back in 2018, all of us parent advisory committees got together and wrote a letter to the board saying, hey, adjusting an enrollment system is great, but until you address the discrepancies between the schools, the disparate programming, the facilities differences. Some schools have had their bond renovations, others have been passed over for 3 or 4 different bond cycles. Until we fix all of this, it doesn't matter what system we put in place, whether we've got new schools, whatever, we've got parents who are going to game the system to get to what they consider the highest quality options. So we really need to make sure that we've got amazing programs. Families love language pathways. We need more language pathways in more languages. We need more STEM programs. We've got these programs at many schools that we know desperately attract families. Build more of those.
Thank you very much. Anne?
I immigrated from a developing country, and developing countries, when they're developing fast, they build a lot of communities in just barren land. And when you plan out those communities, you have to put in schools, grocery stores, community centers. So I think for us, we are a developed country, but there are portions of our city that are developing, which is great. For example, Mission Bay is a brand new community, so it makes sense that you build in schools, commercial corridors, and community centers and libraries, so that you can provide those services for that newly built community. So I'm for that. And in addition, we do need to, someone else mentioned, look at our overall portfolio. We are doing that for the high schools, to see what schools we have where and what programs we have in those schools. And I would like to see that done for middle schools and elementary schools as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Gabriella?
I believe we need to know why our families are choosing to leave SFUSD and what that's rooted in. I know the pandemic was a factor. I know in the past gentrification has impacted enrollment in schools. Students feeling safe at their school site, that is also something that's important for us to recognize. But I don't believe we have that information. I don't think we are able to connect with families enough to learn why, so that we can improve in those areas. Again, as a former teacher in the school district, I was able to see the really wonderful work that was happening at our school sites. The units and the lessons and the curriculum that was built based off of the community we were serving that helped students see themselves in their learning. And that helps people feel safe at school, want to be there. It helps their families be a part of that learning as well. And our school district needs to highlight that. We essentially need to tap into public relations and really learn how we can share the good work that's happening in our school walls versus a lot of the messaging that often tends to be the opposite for public schools.
Thank you very much. And Karen?
Yes, I agree with what Gabriella said. 56% of SFUSD students have at least one immigrant parent. We're a very diverse school district. But I'm concerned that only 58% of our graduates are graduating college and career ready. Among our Black students, 1 in 4 is graduating college and career ready. Among our Latinx students, 1 in 3 is graduating college and career ready. This in a city that has created 7 jobs for every unit of housing basically assures that SFUSD is a giant gentrification force. So what we need to do is make sure we are connecting our homegrown talent. I want to see from 9th grade all the way through high school graduation an individualized learning plan that helps a young person discover what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What am I curious about? And helps them to develop and has a paid summer job in leading San Francisco employers every summer where they get to experience what it is like to be in the workforce field. Enhance career and technical education and college and community partnerships so that we can get our students to and through college, those who want to go.
Thank you very much. And now, on to the next question. During the pandemic, an issue that came to light was the lack of universal high-speed internet for all students. How will you work to address this issue in the coming term? And we'll start with Lisa. No, yep, that's correct.
So I think I'm going to answer the question about universal high-speed internet, but I also want to say it's not just universal high-speed internet. It's access to so many other things that now we understand are critical to learning, both in our educational spaces and outside. That relates to, we talked about food security, that relates to housing security. There's so many other things outside of what we think of when we're in the bubble of a classroom that impact and implicate an individual's ability to learn and engage. I am really, really excited about, as Alita mentioned, that there's state money that's coming into the district to support community schools. Should Proposition G pass, that would be $65 million a year coming into the schools, sort of for the long term. A lot of times we've had programs that are very short in duration, which means they're great for a moment, and then they get ripped out, which actually can cause additional harm. So I'm really looking forward to these other wraparound services that can include everything from social emotion support and well-being to making sure that our families have access to internet so they can engage and do the work that our educators are asking them to do outside of the home.
Thank you very much. Alita?
I love these forums because we all build on each other. It's I don't know, especially 6 women running for office building on each other. It's just awesome. Anyway, so as far yes to everything that Lisa just said, this is a much bigger issue than San Francisco Unified. We still have cell phone dead spots in our city too. So even if we handed out, the Verizon hotspots for families where they didn't have high-speed internet, that didn't solve the problem. So thank goodness during the pandemic we had partners like Hope SF who stepped up and offered computer labs in common rooms in our public housing sites. And we had our community learning hubs that by DCYF that stepped up and provided safe spaces for students to learn and just be in community. Yes, community schools, community partnerships. San Francisco Unified is one of the social safety nets. A strong community needs strong public schools, but it also needs so much else, and it needs all of those systems to function and work together. So being able to collaborate with city partners, being able to work with others is a key component to successful anything.
Thank you very much. Anne?
Coming from the high-tech industry for over 2 decades, there's no shortage of technology or even money. We are a very rich city as well as a rich Bay Area. I think what we need to do is engage, the school district needs to engage more corporate partners to be actual partners. I remember during my son's middle school, Roosevelt Middle School was a trial school for middle school redesign, and every student got an iPad or Chromebook with a Verizon hotspot, so that when the pandemic hit a couple days later, they still had that. And not all of that was accessible to the rest of the students in the school district. But the resources are there, the monies are there, and there's something called corporate social responsibility that many, many companies will be very willing to support the community that they operate in. So we need to tap into that.
Thank you very much. Gabriella?
So as soon as we entered the pandemic, one of the very first decisions we made as a school district was ordering the technology needed for students to learn at home. because it's irresponsible to ask a family to log on to Google Classroom, understand Zoom without having and providing the technology or the school materials needed in order to do that learning. After that, as someone who was on the board understanding and recognizing the issues, and as a teacher, I was providing tech workshops for families in different languages to help them understand how to navigate the tools. Because it's one thing to supplement our communities with the materials they need, but it's another thing to also walk them through how to use them. We were learning that parents were now teachers, and they were supporting their students in ways that they hadn't before. So it was really providing culturally responsive workshops through my work at the Latino Task Force that helped them walk through the platform, learn how to navigate it, learn how to translate it so that it was accessible on their end and they could further help their students.
Thank you very much. Karen?
Yeah, building on what my fellow candidates have said, one of the things I'd really like to see SFUSD strengthen its partnerships with community-based organizations and really think systemically. Last week at a candidate forum, we heard from a parent, why are there so many programs at this school and the programs are totally different at the neighboring school? Shouldn't all schools have a after-school program, the same requirements, make it free, et cetera? So I think the prior superintendent had a standing monthly meeting with the youth-serving community-based organizations. That's no longer happening, according to Vanessa Marrero, the head of Parents for Public Schools. So I really want to make sure that Matt Wayne is meeting on a regular basis with our community-based organizations and thinking system-wide. How can we make sure that there are community-based organizations supporting all the schools, providing access to Wi-Fi, to computers, et cetera, and that it's not a huge discrepancy between what is happening at one school and what is happening at another, and that all students who need access to the internet have it.
Thank you very much. And Lainey?
We still are providing Chromebooks and hotspots to families who request them. But we also want students to come to school. Our truancy and absenteeism rates have skyrocketed. So where my focus is how do we get our students excited about being at school? How do we make it so that they feel supported at school? And I'm interested in building out tutoring services, family liaison, in-language communication, even through our the 20 some odd outreach conversations that we had at school sites. Our in-language offerings were by far the most well attended, which indicates to me that a lot of who's not at the table, who's not connecting with our school sites and our usual patterns and habits are families that are not getting the information because it's just not how they're communicating with us.
Thank you very much. And our next question. SFUSD has been deficit spending since 2017 and has failed to address its structural deficit. How do you plan to address this issue going forward? And we're going to start with Alita.
We need a holistic review of all of the programs that we have in SFUSD. One of the big platforms that I've been working on for a decade is our reading instruction program in San Francisco Unified. We just did an audit, our curriculum and instruction department, and we found that we don't have the foundational skills. We're not teaching the building blocks of reading in over 90% of our schools. And so we wonder why we have less than 50% of our students who are proficient readers. And that foundational skill impacts everything else we do in our district. If you don't learn to read in Gen Ed, you get referred to special education, or you become part of the school to prison pipeline. And we know if you learn to read in 4th grade, it takes 4 times longer. If you get referred to special education intervention, it costs 3 times as much. We know that the work that we're doing is costing ourselves a whole lot of money. So that is just one example of the work we need to do to take a look at What are we doing that could be done much more efficiently and in the long run save ourselves so much money?
Thank you very much. Anne?
Ever since I joined the board, I've started talking to lots of people, and I hear a lot that we need funding from federal, state, local, and philanthropic organizations. We always need more resources. While I don't disagree with that, I actually want to look at our expense side. We have a $1 billion budget. That is not small money. What are we doing with that money? What are we spending money on, and what are we getting for it? Apparently not much. So what I would like to do is that for all the money that we spend on every program, I would like to see the metrics of success for that program. If a program is working, then we give more money and expand it. If the program is not working, does that mean that we stop spending money on whichever community or population of students that program benefits? It is that we switch a program, try a different way to help that community. So what I like to do is to take a look at the expense side and get our money's worth.
Thank you. Gabriella?
I do agree with what's been said, and it's one of those things where we've dreamed of what our classrooms can look like. The resources they should be provided, the materials, the learning experiences we want our students to have, and we haven't actually invested in that because of the outcomes that we've seen. What we're needing to do is monitor the effectiveness of these programs, and if they're not working, then we cannot continue. SFUSD doesn't directly invest in classrooms. If we start our budgeting process with what that classroom experience looks like and really thoughtfully think about the resources needed for a teacher to effectively do their job, then we can focus on other areas. But there's a lot of money going to administrators who don't focus or work with children, and a lot of people on the board who don't know what they do. So it really does take investing in the classroom first and ensuring we hear from educators who know what is best, then thinking about other areas we need to cut back on if they're not serving children.
Thank you very much. And Karen?
So we do have a structural budget deficit at SFUSD because the costs of our retirees and our current operating expenses keep going up, where our revenue is tied to attendance and remains fixed. So we have to figure out how we can address this issue. I think we have a structural budget deficit of public education in the state of California because we have Proposition 13, we capped property taxes, then we passed 3 strikes laws, and we started building all these prisons, and the amount of money we spent on prisons went up by the same amount of money we spent on universities went down, and this is how we've chosen as a state to invest in young people. So we need to work with stakeholders across the state to reform Prop 13, ensure we have the adequate resources for our education, and then we need to be proactive. So it's reactive if you don't assess students early and start intervening early. That saves money. If you wait until problems develop, it costs more later on. Same thing, we have tremendous amount of litigation against SFUSD. What are we learning from those lawsuits to prevent a further lawsuit, the next lawsuit over the same issue?
Thank you. Lainey?
So we are a governance board. We're not a legislative board. Our obligation is to provide quality public education, and we have fiduciary responsibility. I was in the meeting when our former CFO stepped forward and said, we are deficit spending, this is unsustainable. And at the time, I was just a public member. I was there reporting out as co-chair of the budget committee, the budget advisory committee I was on, and I said, in hearing this, we need to stop the spending resolutions that the board keeps putting forward, and we need to review our spending if this is the case. That did not happen. That is happening now. So we are hiring a new auditor. We've had the same auditor for 10 years. I've worked with that auditor. I've seen things that I've seen some laziness. We need to get into our books. We now have, thankfully, as stressful it is as having the Department of Education working with us, it also is a massive resource in understanding what is normal spending and what we should be expecting to see as a board as far as budget reporting. We need to move to zero-based budgeting so we understand what we are spending, what we are getting for it, and we also have to review our curriculum and instruction.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Thank you. I'm also going to get into the weeds now because after having sat on the board for 7 months, we joined the board when the district was facing a significant structural deficit with a projected $125 million shortfall. And I think there's a number of actions, decisions that created that crisis. First, the significant loss of enrollment. With $10,000 being assigned per student, a loss of 2,500 students meant a loss of $25 million to the district. Additionally, we were not and have not been strategic when it comes to how we're spending money, whether it's one-time funding versus ongoing funding sources. And there just hasn't been a strategic, thoughtful analysis of how we're spending money. I believe that our budget reflects our values, and we need to be really, really intentional in how we are spending the money. I'm really proud that one of the early things that we did was pass a balanced budget. And when we adopted the 2022-2023 budget, our projected shortfall for the unrestricted general fund was nearly $22 million. A revised budget brought that shortfall to $1.5 million with an additional in our unassigned balance, and then our projected budget for 23-24 actually showed a surplus. So we're going to see changes to that. We just approved a 6% increase across the board for our teachers, but we need to be really mindful of the spending.
Okay, thank you very much. And our next question, how do you plan to recruit and retain top educators and administrators for SFUSD? And we'll start with Ann.
One way is what Lisa just said. We approved a 6% salary increase for our teachers. I actually had proposed to our superintendent that we may want to make some adjustments to benefits and salaries, perhaps shift some of the benefits to the salaries because salaries actually matter more to younger teachers so that we can attract more of them to come. I remember when I was a 20-some-year-old starting work, I didn't care about retirement or I didn't need any, and I didn't need any health benefits. But those are some of the ideas that we need to think about, think outside of the box for ways to recruit and retain teachers. And one of the ways, for me being on the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, we have a lot of properties in the school district, 155 pieces of properties to be exact. Some of them can be turned into teachers' housing. One, we just broke ground on Shirley Chisholm Village teacher housing project that took 15 years to come to fruition. We need to speed that up. And one of the propositions on our ballot, Prop D, is to speed that up so that we can build more housing for teachers specifically.
Thank you very much. Gabriella?
So this is something that's really personal for me, given I've lived a lot of it. I think there's a culture of respect that is lacking across the city, across the country when it comes to educators. But one thing we need to remember is our teachers are humans, and they are holding so much during a time when they're being forced to take on so much more. And in our district, there's a lot of suffering that's been happening because of some of the issues that haven't been addressed for educators. So starting there is a priority. As the work that I do at the University of San Francisco with future teachers is really implementing the various ways that at the state level are making it easier for people to become educators and for them to be in SFUSD schools. So I get to work with teachers who are clearing their credential, who now don't have to deal with extensive exams, with paying for those exams, and really taking advantage at what the state is providing future teachers so that we can just focus on the learning and the caring that they need in order to better support our students and not have to jump through the many barriers in order for anyone to become a teacher.
Thank you very much. Karen?
We need to pay our teachers and provide benefits, and not only our teachers, but also our SEIU members who support our schools, our administrators. I spoke this morning with a principal, one of the star principals in the district, and she's telling me that she's likely to leave because she hasn't had a raise in 4 years, even though she's been knocking it out of the park. I also think we need to develop from within. We used to have a partnership between UESF and the district that helped paras to become educators, gave them an hour off to study. And I've spoken with many educators of color in particular about what kind of supports they would need. In the city of New York, they have a special initiative within the mayor's office to develop more educators of color. And I'd like to see that here, that provides social, financial, spiritual, and academic support to our educators and develop them from within. I want SFUSD to be the best place to teach in the whole country. We offer ethnic studies. We're a safe place for LGBTQ people. All of these things make us stand out, and it's about housing as well, housing our educators.
Thank you very much. Lainey?
I guess the way I think about it is our students' learning place is our educators' workplace. So if we're going to be focused on students, we need to be supporting our educators so that they can focus on our students and be successful in supporting our students. There's two big things that are in the way of recruiting and retention right now, in my opinion. The two biggest ones are our payroll debacle. We inherited, the three of us coming in, the ramifications of an insufficient contract and scope of work that was coupled with cutting of IT and payroll and HR staff around implementation. We are now working really, really hard. Our former superintendent was very uninterested in collaborating in solutions around this. We have a new superintendent who jumped right in and has been, from day one, pushing to address this and has brought in an IT crisis management firm who is now meeting with us regularly. The other thing is workplace conditions. I hear loud and clear, yes, we need to do pay and benefits, of course, no doubt. We need to benchmark to other districts, but we absolutely have to improve the supports that we're giving around literacy intervention, behavioral intervention, math intervention, the things that support our teachers' work in the classroom.
Thank you very much. And Lisa?
Thank you. Yes, I would say I would agree with all of that, and I would focus on three specific factors that I think are contributing to the teacher shortage and our inability to retrain and attract. One is One is salaries. The second is housing affordability in the city and in the area. And three is low morale. So salaries, I agree. We need to compensate our teachers better, and we need to compensate them and make sure that they're made whole with each and every paycheck in real time, not having to come down to the district and beg to have a check cut or not be sure whether benefits are still intact. I think that salary is a demonstration of respect, and so by increasing salary, it is not only matching expectations in terms of where we live in the Bay Area, but a sign of respect. I also think that the lack of affordable housing in the city is a really, really big impediment to retaining and attracting teachers. So I support the building of more affordable housing, specifically teacher-focused housing. We just recently started to break ground on the first site that Anne mentioned, which is really exciting. And then low morale. We have a brilliant pool of educators. We need to support them. We need to make sure that they feel respected and welcomed and valued.
Thank you very much. Alita?
Yes, to everything everyone has said. There's a saying that all you have to do is drive 10 miles in any direction, and you can make $10,000 more than you do in SFUSD. That's a big, big problem. Our teachers are screaming for more professional development, paid time off to take the professional development, co-planning time with their fellow educators, more resources in our schools, more, like I said earlier, more social workers, more school psychologists, more family liaisons. And I know this question is geared towards teachers, but I have to say, our para-educators are the backbone of our schools. And our para-educators only are given 6 hours a day. And in high schools and middle schools where the school day is longer than that, that's a big problem. That's a part of the reason why we have 100 openings for paraeducators right now. Our paraeducators are asking for more hours. We are doing some work. We've got our pathway programs that are amazing, that we're trying to recruit more bilingual and SPED, special education teachers. Thank you for those programs, SFUSD. But it's really hard to make your way through those when you're in class, you've got limited support, and you're teaching at the same time. It's a real, we should do more to support our teachers in our pathway programs as well.
Thank you very much. Our next question. If we continue to see a decline in enrollments, do you support closing some schools in San Francisco? If you do, how would you decide which schools to close? And Gabriella, you get that question first.
I don't support closing schools. That's where I'm going to start. I don't trust that the school district has enough information and trusted people to gather the information needed to even make that decision. And we've seen what areas in a city are targeted when we're talking about closing schools. I believe that would be the southeast side of San Francisco, and we want to ensure that schools are protected across the city. So that's not an initiative that I would pursue, and I'd certainly learn other ways to go about fixing the issue, but not closing schools.
Thank you very much, Karen.
I agree with Gabriella. I would not pursue closing schools as a remedy. I would pursue making our schools more attractive to attract more students and give parents and families confidence that that their students will succeed in our schools.
Thank you very much. Lainey?
Closing schools is not on the table. That is not at all what we're focused on. We are very, very much focused on getting the district in better shape so it will attract students back to the districts. We have over 30% and counting of families are sending their kids not to SFUSD. So there's plenty of kids here to fill our schools. So the work is to recruit them back by rebuilding trust, by demonstrating that we know what we're doing, by showing that we're teaching kids that they're learning to read, that they can be successful in math, and that there's they'll be career and college ready. So the emphasis is attending to the deferred maintenance that has occurred in our district for far too long, and focusing on building up these schools and also modernizing the buildings. We're recognizing also that our facilities need attention.
Thank you very much. And Lisa?
Thank you. If the answer is a yes/no question, I say no. I don't support closing our schools. I agree with a number of the comments made, including where our focus needs to be, which is filling them and making sure that they're filled in spaces that are safe and clean and lovely to be in, with educators that are excited and supported and feeling valued there. Specifically, we have seen and we know, because school closures have happened around the state, around the Bay Area, we've seen the harm that it has, particularly the disproportionate impact it has on our historically marginalized communities. So communities of color, communities impacted by lower socioeconomic statuses, our immigrant communities. And so I am also very, very concerned and very wary about a path that looks at school closures, given how disproportionately negative the impact would be on many of our communities that we need to be supporting.
Thank you. And Alita?
Well, like I said before, enrollment actually increased this year, so that's a bright spot. But yes, closing schools absolutely needs to be off the table. We just hired a new auditor, as I think Lainey mentioned earlier, right? Or in the process of. Okay. We're in the process of hiring a new auditor who will hopefully take a much closer look. I mentioned earlier that we need to take a holistic look at the programs we have that are costing us more money than they should. I mentioned reading. We need to add the programs like the language pathways, the STEM programs that attract the families, and we really, really need to address the disparity between our schools. One of the priorities of the superintendent this year, and if you've seen his graphic, he talks a lot about educational cohesion, making sure that we've got the same programs available from school to school to school. We're not going to have language pathways, we're not going to have the same special education pathways in every school, but we need to have academic rigor that is going to attract families and going to make sure that we have the programming in place we need to close our opportunity gap, and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that all of our families see that when their student comes to SFUSD, their outcomes are going to be better than theirs were.
Thank you very much. And Anne?
Closing school would only be a discussion if we are deficit spending and cannot sustain ourselves because of too many schools. But if we do examine what we're spending money on, as we discussed earlier in a different question, and as Alita said, audit, and I and fellow board members have said, look at the expense side, which programs are working, which ones are not. If we can get our house in order without closing schools, definitely that is the way to go. We do want to benchmark against other school districts across the state as well as across the country to see how they're doing with number of students enrolled, number of teachers, number of facilities. We do want to take a look at that so that we can learn from them and improve our own practices. But if we can balance our budget without closing schools, certainly that is what we should do.
Thank you very much. And here's our next question. At present, one of the highest performing high schools for low-income Black and Latino students in San Francisco is the KIPP system of charter schools. Are there lessons to be learned from them to support our most underserved communities? Thank you. I knew I'd get that out. And Karen, you get to start.
So I worked for Year Up, which serves predominantly Black, Latinx students. And the lesson that I learned there is when you provide high expectations and high support, and when you have a staff that is very culturally competent, and cultural competence is rewarded, and you create a learning community that students feel very safe in, where they are valued, seen, respected, where when they are not present, someone calls them and notices, and where there are incentives like going to a summer job that is very highly motivating for them. It's also when learning is relevant, when a young person feels connected to what they're learning, and when they see that as a result of learning this, I'm going to be able to do something that I've always wanted to do, that is going to keep them coming to school. And I think all of those things can be applied to SFUSD.
Thank you very much. And Lainey?
I have this very curiosity. So I sat down with KIPP to understand what it is that you do. How is it your schools are full, there's more seats or more demand than seats? And it was fascinating. The work that they're doing was, I was just so pleased to hear their approach. So one-to-one check-in with teachers and coaches, grade level team meetings, content meetings, scope and sequence for the weekly for the year, data on a daily basis, backwards mapped assessment. For English, as our high school students come in, they map curriculum back from the 11th grade AP exam in order to get all students prepared. And just the level of coordination among staff, both grade level and content level, is what I had been talking about at SFUSD, that we need to, right now there's very little way for educators to have conversations about K-12 coherence and then also grade level coherence. And I was I have taken to heart many of the things I heard in that conversation, and I think there's a lot to learn from successful charters such as KIPP.
Thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, so I am a big proponent of not working in silos and learning from others and replicating from wherever it may be. If things are working, let's learn how and why and whether it can be replicated and whether it's appropriate for it to be replicated in the public schools here at SFUSD. I think that we could look at if there's a KIPP system that is particularly effective with a certain demographic. It's great that Lainey was able to have a conversation and learn about what's happening, and can those things be incorporated into the district? That would be great to know. I would take it one step further because I think there's other bright spots within our district that we can also highlight. We saw this past year the amazing rates of UC acceptance at Mission High. What is Mission High doing? How can we replicate it other places? We see what's happening at John Muir with the piloting of a new math program and how it's elevated math and literacy rates specifically among the African American students at John Muir. And thanks to DCYF in the city, it's now being expanded to Sanchez, Flynn, and Malcolm X. So just as we should learn from any other school that's doing things well, I think we also need to stop working within the silos in our own district and replicate what is working really, really well.
Thank you. Alita?
Thank you for this question. As a member of the Charter School Oversight Committee, we actually do a lot of work around disaggregating data. It's great to hear about the high outcomes at KIPP, but I think it's not really fair to consider this an apples-to-apples comparison. KIPP doesn't have special day classes. They have a very low percentage of students who are in foster care or experiencing homelessness. There are anecdotal reports of former board commissioner Stevon Cook used to talk all the time about family members who had been pushed out of KIPP because of behaviors or not meeting academic expectations. So about 4 years ago, I actually wrote an op-ed about the LeBron James I Promise School, which he had just opened in Akron, Ohio, where he partnered with a public school and dumped $1 bazillion into that school to provide wraparound services, busing, all the meals, resources for families, GED classes for parents, on-site laundry, everything. And the premise of that was, oh my gosh, if folks would bring this money that they're putting into charter schools and bring it back into our public schools, oh my goodness, how successful could we all be together?
Thank you. Anne?
I've also heard very good things about the KIPP Bayview charter school, and I talked to a number of people about it, including KIPP themselves, as well as the community members who send their kids to KIPP. And what I've heard is that, in their words, that KIPP has high expectations for their students and for their parents, so that it is engaging the whole family on high expectations, both academically as well as behavior and all other aspects. So I think charter schools, whether it's KIPP or I think Lisa mentioned earlier, other public schools that are successful in whatever programs that we have, we definitely need to treat them like startups in the business world, because they try new things. Sometimes it works, and if and when it works, some large company comes by later and buys them. So in our case, we should implement those practices and scale them up for the rest of the school district.
Thank you very much. Gabriella?
I do want to thank you, Alita, for bringing up a couple of the points. Charter schools are infamous for pushing students out. I'm also really curious, as an educator who observes data, what are we analyzing to get these results? What are the tests that people are looking at? And if it's standardized testing, what do we know and have an understanding around them that shares a lot about how we're examining student learning? I believe that charter schools exist to provide innovative ways for students to learn that other schools currently don't do. One example is the Life Learning Academy on Treasure Island. They provide housing for students while they're learning, and that is something that public schools don't do, something we can't tap into, but that's why charter schools should exist. Currently, we've come to a place where now they're either taking students from public schools, taking over school grounds, having a lot of negative impacts that don't support our own learning. But I do believe that we can tap into what is working within our public schools and different school communities, since we are serving the same students, and learn from that.
Thank you very much. Our next question. What specific changes will you make to EPC? And since I didn't know what EPC meant, I had it explained to me, and it's the Educational Placement Center, to address parents' concerns that they will not get their first choice school. So we're going to start with Lainey.
Dear Lord, 75 seconds doesn't even, I mean, like I say, I've been a parent in the district. I have spent, I'm going to have to say, at least 6 hours at EPC in battle, maybe, describe it as that. And then one of the things we need to have a much simpler system of communication. Every year it changes. When the applications are due, how many rounds there's going to be, how many schools you should put down, how you tour sites. Is it in person? Is it this? Is it the other thing? I have been told that I need to prioritize my feedback for EPC and also recognize that there is a review around our enrollment system. But I'm just going to say this. There's a different enrollment system for our elementary school. There's a different enrollment system for our middle school. There's a different enrollment system for our high schools. There's a different enrollment system for our early education centers. We have to come correct and put our students and families first if we want them to muscle through our system K or pre-K through 12.
Thank you. Lisa?
All right, we're going to come correct. Yeah, no, I, as a parent that has lived through the lottery and freaked out when I saw friends and their, Excel spreadsheets, I'm like, I honestly don't even know where to begin. It is, I appreciate that the lottery system that EPC is attempting to implement for years now is to create integrated schools with some choice. The reality is they're not integrated. People don't feel like there's choice, and it's the process is not transparent or accessible. So I think that one of the changes is around what do our enrollment systems look like? We are the prior board, and now we are looking at changes to the enrollment with the elementary schools. I think that will, if done right, will allow for integrated schools with meaningful choice and with choice to attend schools, and there's parity amongst the schools within the choices that folks have. But right now it's not accessible, it's not transparent, and I think that's one of the reasons why we've heard that folks are leaving the district.
Thank you. Alita?
So it's important to recognize that we have about 120 schools in our portfolio of schools. About 60 of those are elementary schools. And if you go to any of the message boards, the K-files, anything like that, you consistently hear about the same probably dozen schools over and over again, right? So one of the things I mentioned earlier, educational cohesion, disparity between schools. EPC, God love them, but they are a symptom of a larger problem. If you've ever been into EPC the week before an enrollment deadline, you'd probably get through the DMV faster without an appointment, honestly. So there's a lot of work we have to do on our forward-facing customer service, but I think we also really need to be focusing on the programming at our schools and making sure that all of our schools have the programming, the academic rigor, everything that attracts families in, and makes them willing to attend whatever school they get into instead of fighting or gaming the system or whatever to get into maybe those top 6 or dozen schools that they've heard about or they've toured. We have a lot of great schools out there.
Thank you. Anne?
The two most important factors I hear from families when they're choosing schools, one is the quality of schools, whatever that means in each parent's mind. The other one, for a lot of immigrants actually, and non-immigrants, is the language pathway. So a lot of Chinese parents, they want their children, elementary school children, to learn Chinese, and they would willingly drive across town from wherever they live to put their children in those schools. That doesn't even matter the quality factor. They just want the language. So I think as we examine our portfolio of schools, and as we move to a new assignment system, I think is now postponed till 2026 or so, before we institute a zone-based new assignment system, we need to balance out the quote-unquote quality as well as the language pathways, so that when a family is limited to a zone, then all the schools should be high quality, and there should be language options in every zone.
Thank you. Gabriella?
So the Education Placement Center is the first place that our families encounter with SFUSD, and often an experience that they remember as negative. I have hope now that we have a new head of enrollment, because their approach is really building with the people that we're serving, really ensuring that they feel they're a part of the process, they have the information they need, and we can connect with them on a human level. It should not be this really negative experience when someone is beginning with the school district as they're trying to get their child to a safe learning environment. And I do see that shift happening as this is the first place our families are entering. I also agree that in their choices, language has to be a factor. SPED programs should be available for families if they need it. And can they get to the school? Is transportation provided? Or if it's not, what are these factors that, if they're getting in the way, they have an option to choose a school that fits their needs? But it really does start with improving the experience that our families are having at the Education Placement Center.
Thank you. Karen?
Yes, I agree with what's been shared. I'm an attorney, and I was so confused by my experience at the Education Placement Center. I didn't know, I really feel for people who are not native English speakers and have never even navigated a bureaucracy before. I've been thinking a lot about this, that we need to have some kind of ombudsman office within SFUSD so that parents who are having difficulties have a place to go to help them navigate these things. I think that would help tremendously as we iron these things out. And I am very concerned that our schools, I think you saw in the Chronicle just recently, an analysis that 60% of our schools are significantly segregated. So this is something that we really need to take on as a community. And it's not only about SFUSD setting policy, it's also about families taking accountability for their choices and committing to having an integrated public school system. We know that integrated schools benefit everybody. And I want us to work together as a community to create that experience for our young people. I think it will be fantastic for everyone.
Thank you very much. And our next question, which may also be the last question, aren't you all excited? Do you have a longer-term strategic plan to refurbish older schools, and if enrollment was boosted, to build new schools? And we're going to start with Lisa.
I'm sorry, you said longer-term strategic plan
To refurbish older schools, and if enrollment was boosted, to build new schools.
Thank you. So last question, it's a very timely question because as part of our 6-plus-hour board meeting last night, there was a presentation by the facilities department that actually provided a very detailed list of the state of our schools and the amount of money that it would take to refurbish / build new ones. And so there are questions about we're going to need a bond, so we're going to need a generous electorate again. I think it's really important that in order to be thinking about how this capital infrastructure, this money comes in to make sure our school sites are sites that like our kids want to be in, our parents, our caregivers feel good sending their kids to. If we're going to expect the city taxpayer base, which includes us, all of us as San Francisco residents, to support a bond, we need to be building trust. We need to show that we know how to spend the money. We need to show that we're transparent in how we spend the money. We need to show that we can be accountable when the money comes in to be spent. So I think the long-term strategic plan needs to take into account where do we need to focus our energy? Is it the Southeast schools? Probably so. And how are we including that in terms of building up and making sure that there's parity within the district in all of our schools?
Thank you, Lisa. Alita?
Oh, yes. So first of all, like I said before, we have so many schools that have been passed over for bond funding. We absolutely need to focus on getting all of our schools retrofitted. It was mentioned earlier, we have kitchens that aren't functioning, and we are in, the food mecca of the world. So having great food programs, training our, I love Karen's focus on pathways and making all of our students career ready. The beauty of the new Mission Bay School and that whole, and one of the early designs included not just an elementary school, but also a tech hub, a partnership with UCSF that had labs where students could come in, high school students could come in and earn credits and work in UCSF and build that work experience. Why aren't we doing the same thing with many of our tech partners here in the city? Why don't we have classrooms at any of the tech companies, or any of our other big partners? There has been talk for years about moving SODA downtown, rebuilding SODA downtown near all of the performing arts buildings, so that our students have access right there to the professional artists. I mean, the world is our oyster. If we had, yes, count me in for that planning.
Thank you. Anne?
I was the chair of the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, which is a mandated committee that watches over all the bond money. And for the past 4 bonds since 2003, total $2 billion. And we are looking at a new bond. But before that can happen, we need to be more accountable to the spending of our past bond money. And that's what the CBOC's job was. And I think the district has a lot of work to do to provide more transparency to the public so that we can be confident enough to vote for another bond. And second thing I want to mention is that there's a lot of empty office buildings. Maybe we can think outside of the box. Why would we have to spend money to refurbish or build new schools? Why can't we have some sort of partnership to use those buildings for our schools? I think we are the innovation capital of the world. Let's think about other options than spending money and building another new building.
Thank you. Gabriella?
So some of the facilities in SFUSD are really worrisome, and families have been advocating for the improvement of them for what feels like decades. So it's really ensuring that when we're investing in this improvement in quality of schools, then how are we making sure that families get clear information about that process and that progress? Because I'm still hearing that that does not happen. I also think we should be building connections at the state level and taking advantage of programs that can be implemented at the local level. There are a lot of services and resources we can tap into and learn from that'll better support our school districts. Investing in community schools is something that our families have made clear they want and could be a priority in ensuring we get more families involved, we get our enrollment to to rise and help them have access to resources that are outside of the school district's purview. And last is just building the connection with CCSF with across our high schools to help students exit SFUSD with college credit.
Thank you. Karen?
Yeah, so improving the school's physical infrastructure is imperative, as has been discussed. Some of our schools are in very poor condition. There's a list on the Williams list, which is the schools with the worst test scores, 35 schools on the Williams list, and the SFUSD has contracted with an inspector who goes out and reviews these schools and marks on the review, oh yes, that this school is in good repair. But we know these schools are not in good repair. The bathrooms aren't functioning, the lighting is broken, there's broken windows, and all of these problems inhibit learning. I know in my own family, my son used to hold it the entire day and not go to the bathroom until he came home from school because the bathroom is in such poor condition at his school. So I really want to make sure we are renovating our existing schools and building beautiful new schools. Like, everyone here should go see Willie Brown. I was there at the opening. They have maker space. It's just a gorgeous, gorgeous campus. There's so much we can do.
Thank you. Lainey?
So we have so going back to good governance, before we went out for the last bond, we actually did not have a facilities inventory. We hadn't actually looked at our facilities and developed a state of repair plan that informed our decision making. So you might imagine that politics became infused in the decision making of different types of politics. There was also a self-imposed limit of $30 million per site renovation to make it fair, without recognizing that our high schools are much larger than our elementary schools, just the number of kids being served, but also the facilities themselves. So one of the things that we're talking about is when we go out for the next bond, which will be sometime in March 24th, fingers crossed, and we have to instill confidence that this district is capable of managing money well. First step is have a facilities plan that's color-coded, and it actually explains why we're prioritizing some projects over others. But we have student nutrition services, IT services, and really the facelift of a lot of schools, since many of them were built long, long ago. And I have been pushing for ensuring that the difficult projects don't get delayed just because they're difficult.
Thank you very much. And now we come to the candidates' closing statements.
We've said it all. There's no more.
We will do the closing statements in reverse alphabetical order. And remember that you have 90 seconds. So we're going to start with Lisa.
Great, thank you, and thank you again. So I've spent over 16 years now challenging an awful, inhumane, and inequitable immigration system. I have the stamina, the wherewithal, and the commitment to work alongside community to improve the lives of others. Over the last nearly 10 years of teaching law students, I tell them, be careful. When you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And this is a reminder that not everything needs to be a fight. And some of the most effective change is a result of consensus building and listening and talking. And after having many, many conversations with parents, it's clear that at the core, all we want is what is best for our kids. And I'm committed to what I want for my own kid, I want for everyone else's kids. And this is a necessary shift that we all have to make, that what we want for our own children, we have to be willing to want for each other's children. And that's the place where we start our conversation. We start our conversations from a place of commonality, not from a place of difference. I'm really excited about I think the unique position and the positionality that I bring to this board as a mayoral appointee. I have the backing and the support of the Educators Union. I have the backing and support of the San Francisco Democratic Party. I have over 24 Democratic clubs and unions supporting and endorsing me because they understand that I am focused on students and not engaging in performative politics. And I'm really looking forward to continuing the work that we've been doing to put our students first.
Thank you very much. And Lainey?
Thank you for your time, and I hope in the last couple hours you've heard my commitment and, frankly, my competency in doing this work. I was appointed in March. I was one of the mayoral appointees, and I've taken it really serious, and I feel like I came prepared to do the work. I'm wholly focused on our students' success and aligning all of our systems and funding to prioritize our students' needs and our educators. So again, the primary focus, the priorities are student success, fiscal responsibility, good governance, and rebuilding trust. And rebuilding trust means delivering on our obligation to provide quality education to all of our students at all of our sites. Our budget needs to follow our student priorities, and I just want to outline that in the last 7 months, we've hired a new superintendent that I have great confidence in. We've balanced the budget, rescinded teacher layoffs, helped to shore up city partnerships and financial resources, committed to focusing on student success. We've committed to governance training. We're now reviewing the facilities. We're looking at curriculum and instruction. We're doing things that have not been done in this district for 15 years, 20 years, and sometimes no one remembers ever doing something like this. So I'm committed to being part of a board that comes together to do our work with shared values and respect for all students and families. And students will not benefit until our adult behaviors change, and I believe my experience and commitment has shown that I'm willing to serve and I'm going to serve for all of our students.
Thank you very much. And Karen?
The theme of my campaign is unifying San Francisco for San Francisco Unified. All of us in San Francisco have a stake in the success of our public education system. A safe and prosperous San Francisco begins with safe, high-quality public education for every young person. I know from my 20 years of youth development experience that all young people love learning. All families love learning. It is the responsibility of the Board of Education to provide learning environments where all students can thrive. I will use my experience working with immigrants, preparing young adults for success in college and careers, and healing divides to bring our school system together and to get our communities working together in service for all of our students, really emphasizing how we can prepare and connect all of our high school graduates to college or careers. My priorities are to invest in social emotional well-being and academics, to provide budget transparency and accountability, and to promote collaborative decision-making. Thank you so much for listening to us tonight, and I realize I forgot to mention at the beginning, I live in D5 in the Fillmore.
Thank you. Gabriella?
Thank you, everyone, for hearing us and for being here tonight. I am here to ensure we elevate the voices, concerns, and priorities of the people who are often left out of these spaces. I am an educator. I have vast experience and a level of expertise that has not been involved at the Board of Education level, and that extends from arts education, prison education, to bilingual education. My priorities include increasing school funding and resources, expanding math, reading, and science opportunities, and investing in college preparation across the school district. I am an advocate for education in my current roles and will continue to be as I am able to connect communities with the work being done in education in decision-making spaces. We are in a critical moment in education, and having caring individuals in these spaces is necessary for students to feel safe in their learning environments. I am passionate and dedicated to this important work, and I know what it's like to connect what we're doing while serving on the Board of Education. I've learned from previously serving, I've grown from it, and I'm ready to continue advocating for all of us to better serve our students.
Thank you very much. Anne?
I am the only immigrant and business person on the board. There is a significant population of immigrant students and families in our school district, and I understand how they feel, what they need, and I'm prepared to help them get that support from the school district. I'm also a business person, which is quite new to our school district, and I think that unique perspective could very well help us move in the right direction with some fiscal discipline and operational excellence. I have qualified background to run organizations, and my priorities on the school board are student achievement and academic excellence, safe schools, both physically and emotionally for our students, and school district's fiscal discipline and operational excellence. I'm here to reform SFUSD, to get the politics out of it, and for us to focus on educating students.
Thank you very much. And Alita?
So it's been a really tough couple years in San Francisco between the pandemic and recalls and everything. So first of all, to former President Lopez, thank you for your service. For our 3 current commissioners, thank you for your service. And to Ms. Fleshman, thank you for being willing to step up in this environment. So thank you all. I'm running because of my experience, 10 years of district level advisory committees. I'm running because of my day job. As a special education advocate, no one hires an advocate to come into a meeting where the team is functioning well, where the student is getting everything they need. They hire an advocate when things are broken and they need help. So I come in, bring it back to the focus on the students. And invariably, when you bring in more supports and services into a classroom for one student, the entire classroom benefits. That's universal design for learning. We need more of everything in all of our classrooms, but we have to do it from a student-centered way, and we have to do it from a place of collaboration and respect. And that's what I want to bring back to our schools. My dad always jokes that he votes to cancel my mom out because he's a Republican and she's a Democrat, and they've been married 51 years. So we can do this. We can work together. We can laugh together. We can break bread together, and we can build great outcomes for all of our kids together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And ladies, I just want you to know I applaud you all for taking time out of your lives to run for the office on the Board of Education. Sometimes people aren't out there going, yay, hey, but you're doing it anyway, and we really appreciate it on behalf of our children in the city of San Francisco. So now I shall close. On behalf of myself and the League of Women Voters of San Francisco, our thanks to the candidates for participating, and thanks to each of you for taking the time to inform yourselves about your choices on the November 8th ballot. Please remember to register to vote. If you aren't already registered, and urge others to register also. If you've changed your name or you've moved, you need to register again at your new address. And if you will be voting by mail this year, and I believe every resident of California has the opportunity to do so, please be sure that your vote will count by ensuring that your ballot is mailed or dropped off at a polling place or voting center early. Again, thank you, good evening, take care, stay safe. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Maxine.